Well, you know, love is a many-splendored thing. It also comes with thorns around the edges if you're not careful. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. Laura will be joining us very shortly. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but beyond what was said, and a lot was said, I have no memory, and I've seen maybe 20-something years worth of these presidential meet and greets, meetings at the White House. The pool is allowed in, and then they're sent away. President Trump made sure that the media stayed because he wanted them to see something. And I think he wanted that image of he presiding over a bipartisan meeting that wasn't rancorous or nasty, though it got heated at moments. He defended his point of view. There was some back and forth, not all of it entirely clear. And then there were some other moments that stood out. James, do you have that, when he and Steny Hoyer had that exchange about the nature of the bill, the scope of it, what it would mean?
The Speaker, I think today, but maybe yesterday, said we need to solve the DACA issue, and we need to solve it in a way that is permanent, not temporary. And I agree with him on that issue.
And interestingly, when you say that, President Obama, when he signed the executive order, actually said he doesn't have the right to do this. And so you do have to go through Congress, and you do have to make it permanent. Whether he does, whether he doesn't, let's assume he doesn't. You said it. And that was a temporary stopgap. I don't think we want that. I think we want to have a permanent solution to this. And I think everybody in this room feels that way and very strongly.
But you see, a great point arose there. Laura mentioned this on the Ingraham angle last night. Donald Trump wasn't elected to fix DACA. This was an overreach by President Barack Obama, who, out of whole cloth, by executive fiat, said all of these kids that should be deported under law, we are going to keep them here, allow them to stay. Of course, he didn't make provisions of how that would happen or for how long. He didn't have the power to do that. Certainly couldn't fund it, couldn't do anything except issue that mandate, which he did. But it was done by executive fiat. It was done in a wrong way. Now the president is trying to, in a legislative fashion, cure and fix the difficulty. Not by executive fiat, but with the cooperation of Congress, which is where it should reside. It's a constitutional prerogative of Congress to regulate immigration and with the president's input. But I was elated to see the picture of this because it did put to rest all of those silly narratives that we've been hearing in recent days, the Michael Wolff book and other charges of the president being out of touch, not having a command of issues, all of that. That I think with this visual is over. But when you peel deeply into it, there are some things that we need to watch. There are some concerning aspects around the edges. There was another moment when Dianne Feinstein quizzed the president about a clean DACA bill. And in the mind of President Trump, I think because he's been saying it so long, a clean DACA bill to him is one that includes an end to chain migration, more enforcement on the border, and his wall, among other issues. But definitely those things. There are 3 or 4 absolute non-negotiables that he's been talking about since before the election. And he's continued as this DACA negotiation is heated up. Do you have that exchange, James?
What about a clean DACA bill now with a commitment that we go into a comprehensive immigration reform procedure like we did back, I remember when Kennedy was here. And
I think that's basically what Dick is saying. We're going to come up with DACA, we're going to do DACA, and then we can start immediately on the phase 2, which would be comprehensive. But I think we have to do DACA first.
Mr. President, you need to be clear, though. I think what Senator Feinstein's asking here, when we talk about just DACA, we don't want to be back here 2 years later. You have to have security, as the Secretary would tell you.
But I think that's what she's saying.
I think she's saying something different.
Mm-hmm. You see, there was a little talking past one another. But the new Secretary of Homeland Security made it clear, and there was a back and forth with the Democrats, recognized, where they were arguing might not really be necessary. Maybe you don't even need a hard wall. Maybe it's just fencing and some laser beams. The president, be very careful here. because he ran on, and it couldn't have been clearer, he ran on building of a wall. And he said Mexico was going to pay for that wall. We've got legions of sound bites with him saying that over and over and over on the campaign trail. I worry that if he gives too much on this issue, and if the wall becomes a transparent one, or one that the American people can't see with great scope, he runs the risk of what I call the George H.W. Bush trap, which is you don't go make a vow to the American people when campaigning and expect it will not come back to haunt you in midterms and when you run for re-election. Read my lips, no new taxes. Remember that? I remember my in-laws saying, he lied to us. He lied to us. They were deeply, deeply heartbroken by what George H.W. Bush did. Now, was it a compromise he should have made? Maybe. But the fact is he ran on it. And when you run on something and you make a vow to the American people, come hell or high water, you better make sure that that vow it becomes a reality. Because they feel you broken faith with them. So yesterday, I am not, and I don't think Laura is as excised as some are after this meeting, because Donald Trump is first and foremost a salesman. Okay? He knows how to go in and make the sale. This is the sale. Here's the ask. We're going to do a DACA deal. And, I'd like to do a long-term deal, too. But we'll see if we can come together and meet. We got to have that wall. We need to have... And he kind of laid out his must-haves on any DACA deal. Go to, I think it's Trump... Yeah, Trump 3. Go to Trump 3, James. Because this was a moment where he was very clear. After a lot of back and forth with Dianne Feinstein and others, he returned to that wall. I think he has an innate sense, because of his background, that when you tell the American people, I'm going to do this, you have to do it.
You need the wall. I mean, it's wonderful. I'd love not to build the wall, but you need the wall. And I will tell you this, the ICE officers and the Border Patrol agents, I had them just recently up. They say if you don't have the wall, in certain areas, obviously, that aren't protected by nature, if you don't have the wall, you cannot have security. You just can't have it. It doesn't work. Without the wall, security doesn't work. We're all wasting time.
Wow. So when I heard that, and I think people have to take that with a grain of salt, because I've been reading all the commentary. I read Ann Coulter that this is over, and he's selling us out, and there'll be no wall. There goes your wall. I'm not sure. I also think, like any good salesman, Donald Trump goes out, he sells it, and he gets the reaction of the consumer. Okay, what's the reaction? But on these issues, he's been pretty firm. Ending chain migration, getting more immigration judges and ICE officers, and building of the wall. I want your reaction. What did you think when you saw this? You were sitting there, you were watching this. It was an amazing moment. I don't know if people outside the Beltway can appreciate how we got to go inside what is normally described as the closed-door meeting or the backroom deal meeting. And to see that play out and watch the president entertain and stoke debate and to bring Democrats and Republicans together, which was a major feat. Everybody's going to lose a little something. That's the nature of Washington and a negotiation. But I think he staked out a pretty firm position. 855-40, Laura, 855-405-2872. Did you like what you saw? Or do you think the bottom is falling out and the president is about to somehow break his promise to the American people to build this wall? If you listened to very closely, as I was, there was that moment when he was asked about the lottery. The lottery being, the visa lottery willy-nilly allows immigrants into the country. It doesn't select by merit or region or any of that. It's simply a random system. And it's something the president has been very upset about. A number of people have come into the country, including some of these guys who enacted terrorism upon our country, driving that truck down a biker lane in New York. A lot of these people came in via the lottery system. He wants to end it. Go to Trump 11, I think.
They call it Visa lottery. I just call it lottery, where countries come in and they put names in a hopper. They're not giving you their best names. Common sense means they're not giving you their best names. They're giving you people that they don't want. And then we take them out of the lottery. And where they do it by hand, where they put the hand in a bowl, what's in their hand are the worst of the worst. But they put people that they don't want into a lottery, and the United States takes those people.
He's very adamant about ending this visa lottery. This is a prerequisite of any DACA deal. But remember to distinguish this. DACA is just taking care of the deferred action on these alien children. Okay, that's the DACA. It's President Obama waved his wand and said, we're not going to do anything. We're going to let these kids stay in the country. Now, kids is a very loose term. These are people who were brought in as kids, but some of them are in their 30s. They're late 30s. They're 40s. You know, they're older people now, but they still constitute and are under and are within the window of being brought in at this particular time. So they are described as the DACA kids. But we shouldn't imagine that, you know, these are middle school children romping around the playground. They're not. And in some cases, they are less than stellar, like any other group of people. So we shouldn't romanticize them nor demonize them. But the question is this, and I'm going to ask it to you. There are Democrats who are saying they will hold the federal budget hostage to a DACA deal. So if we don't have a DACA deal, we will not vote for the budget. We will just abstain and block it, shut the government down. Is it, in your mind, worth holding the American taxpayer, veterans, the elderly, our indigent poor in this country, American citizens hostage, and their benefits and the services that they rely on? Is it worth holding them hostage for the benefit of 800,000 people who, no matter how we feel about them, they entered the country illegally? They are not citizens. 855-40-LAURA. We will take your calls. The Laura Ingraham Show continues in a moment. Coming up, we have Mario Diaz-Balart, who was a Republican member of Congress, still is. He was in that meeting yesterday with the president. He'll tell us about it. Corey Lewandowski, the former campaign manager to Donald Trump, and Sheriff Joe Arpaio running for Arizona Senate. Oh, he's got stuff to say. And Jeff Flake, the current Arizona senator, he had some things to say about the wall. We'll get to that on the other side of this break. The Laura Ingraham Show continues in a moment. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura. Laura coming back instantly. That was Steny Hoyer, the minority leader, minority whip in the Democratic Party. Oh, every line lit up. I know you all want to talk about this. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. She'll be here shortly. Tim in Maryland, line 1. You wanted to say what?
I wanted to say that it could be a huge opportunity for President Trump, because if he does something permanent, something Obama was unable to do, he could say, look, I've made this step, I've made it permanent, and I'm creating a lot of jobs. This is good for you. You should vote for the Republicans instead of Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is clearly, there is a political agenda here at play beneath where the Democrat position is. Because I do think they'd like to normalize all of these people, and it will create 800,000 mostly Democratic voters. Not entirely, but mostly Democratic voters. And I think there's an awareness of that as well. You heard in Steny Hoyer's comments, he wants a DACA deal done. He wants a limited amnesty done first, and then down the road we'll take care of border security. Dianne Feinstein said similar things. That I don't think is going to wash. Sean, Maryland, line 4. You wanted to say what?
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to say I do think he's going to cave. And the reason I think he's going to cave, it's twofold. The first being he almost did it with Obamacare. He's not ideological. He made these promises, and ultimately he's at the whim of the people who put the bills in front of him. And Obamacare, he almost let them roll him by giving him a bill that didn't repeal government health care. It just enshrined it, and he was about to sign it and just lie to everybody and say, oh, yeah, this is a repeal. I think he's going to do the same thing now, and the key, Raymond, is because ask yourself this question. Who in the room who writes the bill believes in his agenda? None of them do. They're all Chamber of Commerce people who all want amnesty, including McConnell and Ryan. And that's the problem. There's no one in the Freedom Caucus isn't strong enough to stop them, I don't think, this time. And I think they're just going to say, well, we'll let you rebuild some of the pre-existing physical barriers, and that way you can try to fool your voters and say you got a new wall. We're not going to get a new wall. I'll bet my shirt we don't get it. We don't get E-Verify. I'll bet my shirt on that.
Sean, hang on the line. I want to continue this because I want to play a little bite for you, and we'll do it when we come back. His exchange to, I believe the representative was from Hawaii, and it was about funding of the wall. I don't know how the president gets away from building a real wall, a big, beautiful wall, in his terminology. He promised the American people that should he dodge that or markedly offend that promise, his party will be out of power, and I doubt if he'll get reelected in 2020. I'm just White House. This DACA or might not mean for the long-term promises the president made vis-a-vis immigration. Sean, repeat what your concerns were. I mean, the president clearly has said he wants a wall. He's going to have a wall. We're wasting our time if we're not talking about a wall.
My concerns are because it's fitting a pattern, and the pattern was established with Obamacare, where everyone, including him, was saying, oh, it's a repeal, when in no way was it a repeal. It just fixed government health care the Republican way. And he just wanted to win. He was willing to sign whatever McConnell and Ryan put in front of him and call it that. He was about to do that. And I got my problems with McCain, but thank goodness McCain sank that, because if not, government health care would be enshrined. Well, now I think he's going to do the same thing with immigration, because he's signaling that, hey, I'm going to sign whatever you put in front of me. He actually said that many times, and I believe him. And the question is, ask yourself, who in the room who writes the bill actually believes what we, the base of the party, believe, that we need immigration fixed? And the answer is no one. McConnell and Ryan are their wholly owned subsidiaries of the the Chamber of Commerce. They want illegal immigration. They like that.
Well, they're both on the record, though. Yeah, Sean, I just have to say, they're both on the record as saying they support the president's position on this. So we have to take them at their word and hold them accountable. I'm going to leave it there, but thank you for the comment. Now I want to go to someone who's actually in that meeting with the 22 lawmakers yesterday at the White House, Representative Mario Diaz-Balart, Republican congressman from Florida. We thank you very much for joining us, Congressman. I want your insight on this. There was a lot of back and forth, and I think we have every line lit up. Listeners very concerned about what they heard because they weren't sure what we came away with. Now, you were in the full 2-hour meeting. We only saw about 45 minutes, 50 minutes of it. What was your takeaway when you left?
Well, I've been involved in a lot of meetings, but I've also dealt with this president on a number of very complex, complicated issues. And here's what I think was interesting. And we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of the meeting, but I think the American people got to see the person that I've dealt with. There's been all this innuendo, frankly not innuendo, statements that the president is not stable, he's not real, he doesn't know anything, he's stupid. Well, you know something? That's just not true. I've dealt with him on a number of issues. I was actually, it's the first time I've seen a meeting like this open this long that's not scripted. And I think what you saw there is a president who likes to hear different ideas, who throws things out there. He was dealing. To me, it looked like a board meeting of like a corporation where you have the CEO out, throwing ideas, questioning people, challenging people. Not a hint of arrogance, by the way. You'll recall when President Obama had his health care meeting with Republicans right after he got elected. He was pompous. He was just arrogant. There was that one time when he said, "Well, I won the elections and you guys lost, though." Right. You didn't see that because that's not. This is a president who is a CEO, and I think it's important that the American people saw that. Now, you can agree or disagree with what you saw, but here's a guy who's in control. That's That's
the question is to so many of those who supported Donald Trump, and we've been hearing from this morning, they were promised a wall. They were promised that Mexico would pay for that wall. They were promised that DACA would end. Now we're hearing things, and in that meeting, the president said at one point, we'll play that moment, James, where he said he was open to signing the bill that Congress sends him.
Not much has actually changed here in terms of your positions.
No, I think it's changed. I think my positions are going to be what the people in this room come up with. I am very much reliant on the people in this room. I know most of the people on both sides. I have a lot of respect for the people on both sides. And what I approve is going to be very much reliant on what the people in this room come to me with.
Well, you see, that caused a lot of heartburn among the base of the party and many of our callers this morning, Congressman. So where was it left? That's what I'm really after. Did the president, is he insisting on there must be a physical wall? It has to be funded. We need more border agents and immigration lawyers, or judges rather, and we have to end chain migration as part of any DACA deal. Is that where it ended?
Yeah, look, this is very simple. Look, and again, I think people underestimate the president, and sometimes, obviously the press doesn't underestimate him; they want to destroy him. But I think a lot of folks, even who support him, underestimate him a lot. And let me tell you what the president got done in this meeting. Look, I have a confession to make. When I was invited and I saw a huge list, I said, "Oh my God, this is going to be a waste of time. It's too many people. It's going to be a dog and pony show." And yet, the president handled it masterfully. Here's what he got. Remember, whatever we do on border security requires 60 votes in the Senate. That's not what I wish it was. But that's the system that we have, right? And the Democrats have been saying over their body they're going to deal with. They're not even going to talk about changing or ending chain migration. They're not going to talk about ending or even tweaking a bit the diversity lottery visa system. They've said that, by the way, for months. You know that it's been all over the place, and yet the camera is rolling, and his really disarming style. What is it that? There are two things that came from that meeting. That in order to, and remember what the president, and he said this very clearly, he ended this, what he said, and I think he's got a lot of validity to that what President Obama did with DACA was potentially unconstitutional, and that it required a legislative fix. The president has always said that, it required a legislative fix. And when he got rid of it, he said, it goes away in March, and Congress, you guys have to now figure out what you want to do something that's constitutional. You also saw, by the way, that a federal court in California now has stopped that from happening. So we don't know whether DACA is going to go away or not on its own, but the president has always insisted that the way to do it, anything like this, should not be done by the stroke of the pen of the president. And Obama used to do stuff all the time. So what did he get the Democrats there to agree to? That we're going to deal with DACA in the legislative, constitutional way, but we're going to deal with real border security, including the wall. We're going to deal with the issue of chain migration. Now, Raymond, you and I know that has been an untouchable thing for Democrats to even talk about in the past. But they agreed to deal with it. Now, we're going to have to negotiate this. I get this. We're going to have to negotiate all of this stuff. But chain migration, this lottery visa, known as a diversity visa, real border security, and DACA. And you saw there, in his disarming way, getting everybody to talk, that everybody agreed to do that and to negotiate, hash those things out. The president has said, whether you like it or not, disagree with him or not, that none of this stuff is going to happen without border security, without dealing with these other issues. So here's the question. What's a better deal for the American people if what you support is, let's, for argument's sake, say that the only thing that, Raymond, that you support, obviously for argument's sake, is the only thing that you care about is border security. Well, you're not going to get it on its own. And by the way, the House has passed bill after bill after bill for, decades now.
And it's gone nowhere, yep.
Well, because it requires 60 votes in the Senate. So this president, I will tell you, has impressed me in his ability, not like Obama with arrogance and with, no, in his ability to just talk and listen and be nice with a sense of humor at times. But so now the negotiations are not, DACA, or now the negotiations are not the wall, which, by the way, would never get 60 votes. The negotiations are those 4 issues. And I know people are saying, wait a second, the president said that he would accept what this group would agree to. Well, yeah, there are obviously Democrats in this group. Again, it requires 60 votes in the Senate. But, I whether you like them or not, I don't think anybody can claim that Raul Labrador is a left-wing radical. Bob Goodlatte, Senator Cotton, Senator Tillis. You're talking about some folks, John Cornyn from Texas, right? You're talking about folks who want to get things done. So if you believe in border security, we've never been this close. If you believe that we got to deal with the issue of chain migration, it's never been in the conversation except for this president now forced it on the agenda. If you believe that the issues that we have and that we've had recently, by the way, with at least one case of terrorism, the person came through this visa lottery process. If you believe that we should be looking at that, this president now has put that on the table. He's got Democrats that have to be part of the solution because, again, it requires 60 votes. I wish it wasn't the case. I'm a House member. But that's the reality. And, yes, dealing with DACA, not through an executive order of the president, but doing it through a legislative process as it should be done.
Congressman Diaz-Balart, I have to ask you this. One of your colleagues, Steve King, was making some noise this morning. He is not quite so bullish on this meeting or the approach as you are. I'd like your reaction. Listen.
There won't be anybody at the White House that opposes amnesty. I think the president shares a view with the people he's going to be discussing this with today, and it's not the view he had during the campaign. But if he grants DACA amnesty, then that's off the table, and he'll take rank with maybe with the same mistake that Ronald Reagan made, which was signing the Amnesty Act in 1986.
By the way, I will tell you another confession. I'm a friend of Steve King's. I have a great relationship with him, so I'm never, ever going to ever say anything bad about him. But I disagree with him, and I'll tell you why I say that. There were mistakes made in that 86 deal with President Reagan. And by the way, I think President Reagan was potentially the best president this country's had after Abraham Lincoln. But what was the big mistake? That, in essence, there was a legalization for about 3 million people. There was the promise of dealing with, border security. So the legalization took place, but the border security never took place. And so then, you have now, 11, who knows, 12 million folks here. What this president has said, and he's been very clear about it, no, we're going to deal with border security, real border security, and these other 2 issues that I mentioned as part of it, not later, not a promise, a wink and a nod. It's going to be part of it. It's going to be part of it. And so here's the question. How do you get Democrats that we need, because again, I don't like it, but it requires 60 votes, to vote for some of these things that they've never voted for? Never voted for. The wall, the border security, and more people, more personnel. And how do you do that? So there's 2 choices. We can sit back and complain from here, and the president will be there for 8 years, and the president will never be able to get any border security stuff done. But we'll be able to complain that those darn Democrats, or you can try to negotiate something that is good for the country, for the American people, for our national security interests, and will get the president what he promised and what he needs. I will tell you, I've been involved here now for a number of years. I've had my differences, by the way, even recently with President Trump. But I think President Trump showed yesterday and throughout this process a level of understanding, of sophistication, of brilliance that I will tell you I have not seen in a long time.
Congressman Balart, Laura Ingram's just sitting in with us here.
Sitting in?
Taking the reins.
You're sitting in for me.
So
that's right, I'm sitting in.
Somehow
What do you
you
mean you're sitting
you let her
in?
participate? You let her participate in the show?
Hardly.
Congressman, ¿cómo está?
It has been a long
año.
time, Laura. It has been too long. Laura, how
are you?
I'm healthy.
You've been
and my
hiding
family's
from me.
healthy,
Why would you do
blessed.
that? I'm such a nice person. Just tease it. So So tell me I know you and Raymond were talking about this, but I have to say this narrative that has been pushed by the left and a few Republicans like Jeff Flake and others that the president has some mental condition. And they said, he only did that yesterday to show everyone he doesn't have a mental condition. I think he did that yesterday because he's a disruptor. And I said this last night on my show, Congressman. I might not be thrilled with some of the results from this immigration issue. I mean, I'm kind of a straight down the line on this. I think the only way you should do amnesty is after you have some period of real verifiable enforcement. And so that's where I am, and that's what I think he campaigned on. But nevertheless, this guy is just he's going to break every convention in order to find results. And I've said this repeatedly. He is really impatient for change. Washington moves at a glacial pace. This guy wants results yesterday. And I like that, frankly, even though, again, I might not like every result. I like the fact that he wants to get stuff done. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, he wants to get stuff done. He wants to get stuff done based on principles, on conservative principles. And let me, actually, Laura, I'm going to stop myself. I was going to say something about Senator Jeff Flake, but you remember that old saying, if you don't have anything good to say about somebody, you shouldn't say anything?
Yeah, well, what am I going to do for 3 hours a day then?
Yeah, and I really am trying to find something, nice to say about Senator Flake, so I have to move on.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, he's not running for re-election. Personally, I don't. I'm looking forward to the day where I don't have to deal with him. Look, this president, I have a lot of disagreements with this president. But here's a couple things. You're right. This narrative that he's clueless, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. He does it in a way that is not arrogant. He listens, but it's very clear. And if you look at that, he started the meeting saying, these are the principles that I demand. And if you look at, there were only 2 things agreed to in that meeting. 4 things that we were talking about based on those principles.
Yeah.
And then that we were going to do it fast. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Hey, Congressman, can you come on the show, TV? I'd love to have you on TV. I've known you for,
longer
decades.
Than you and I should admit publicly you've known me. Right.
Yeah, decades. I've known you for decades.
Right.
But I would love to have your voice on TV. I will do half the show in Spanish. I'll see if my Spanish is good enough. I think it's pretty good. I'm just teasing. Well, we'll come on TV. We'll talk about this and a lot more. Really happy that you came on the show today, and Happy New Year. We're going to take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. I'm a little under the weather, but we'll be back, and Raymond Arroyo's with. Don't go away. Are you worried Trump is waffling on the wall and the border? 855-40-LAURA. I want to take your temperature when we come back. For the establishment, and I'm talking the Chamber of Commerce, Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake, who else am I missing? Jeb Bush, to try to drive a wedge between this president and his base. And that's exactly what you heard in that soundbite from Lindsey Graham. Now, there's a reason these guys won't come on the radio or TV with me. Why do you think they won't? We invite them on several times a week. And I'm talking about all the big stars. All the big stars in the establishment. So, of course, Flake, Graham. And look, I like Lindsey Graham. As a person, I've known him for 20 years. I've known him since the impeachment manager days. Okay, that's how long I've known Lindsey Graham. And I like him as a person. I really do. And I'm not just saying that to say it. I like that. However, we, in part, on talk radio, and certain people on Fox News are partly responsible for Donald Trump being president. Thank you very much. If it weren't for this microphone and the microphones on practical thinking and common sense thinking hosts on Fox, you think Trump would have won? We were the only place, when your people were trashing Donald Trump, this was the only place he was getting a fair shake. So don't you trot in here, prance in here, and you start laying down against talk radio.
Right-wing radio and TV talk show hosts are going to beat the crap out of us.
No, you know what we're doing, however, we're exposing what may be, and I say maybe because I'm going to reserve judgment, a colossal mistake for the GOP or a big setup for Donald Trump. How many of you saw right through the truculent attitude of these Republicans, many of whom were calling Donald Trump every name in the book during the primary season. How many of you saw right through the slobbering flattery yesterday at that meeting? Oh, you're so great. No. I think he's greater. No, he's great. No. Mr. President, you're so great. I hope the president doesn't fall for that flattery. 855-40-LAURA. Are you worried about the president caving, collapsing, or compromising away one of the pillars of his presidency? And the reason he won this election, I said this last night on the Ingraham angle, he won this election in large part by having a different attitude than the rest of them on the issue of immigration. His attitude was simple. It was law and order. It was America first. It was not the rush to cater to illegals. In fact, it was the opposite. He called Jeb Bush low-energy Jeb, and he also referred to him as amnesty Jeb. Amnesty Marco, that they were willing to trade away American sovereignty and the rule of law for their dream of amnesty. They wanted cheap labor over at the Chamber of Commerce. They wanted open borders in the Democrat Party to get new voters. And that horrible and sickening collusion has led to tens of millions of Americans coming into this country illegally and on overstayed visas, and, of course, for decades on chain migration. And no one said anything about this in any real way until Donald Trump came along. And Donald Trump comes along and says, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to call you-know-what on all of you because you are selling out the American people. And I don't think Americans really are desperate to see this forced bipartisanship. Bipartisanship for its own sake is nothing close to some great accomplishment. Bipartisanship for its own sake is just a ploy. Bipartisanship, when it results in good for the American people, is phenomenal. I love that. But bipartisanship to simply ram through an establishment agenda item that further compromises the interests of the American citizens and legal immigrants, I'm not for that. So again, I'm going to reserve judgment on the final product here, but I am extremely concerned when I see the president getting lavish praise from Jeb Bush, Lindsey Graham, and the likes of the Chamber of Commerce. All you need to do is throw in Cory Gardner from Colorado, and we'll be off to the races. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. We're going to go to the calls, and also let's hear from Jeff Flake. That was the Ain't No Mountain High Enough, James. That's what you're supposed to play. So people got the sense that he was talking about the mountains and and so forth, but let's listen.
The president drilled down a bit more on what the wall means. The president noted that there are rivers, there are mountains that prohibit any kind of wall, the need for any kind of wall, that it won't be a 2,000-mile wall, that we're looking at probably something around 700-800 miles. And the president also noted that an opaque kind of wall doesn't serve us well. So the wall isn't really a wall, it's mostly a fence, and it doesn't stretch for 2,000 miles.
A wall isn't a wall, it's mostly... So when he was at all those rallies and he said, we're going to build a kind of wall that's see-through in most of it, and Mexico's not going to pay for it. Do you think that would have been a fun chant at the rallies?
It's like that old Streisand song, a home is not a home, a wall is not a wall, I guess. But there's a lot of conflict here, Laura, because the president was actually very clear. Play Trump 3, James. He was very clear as this conversation went on, and I think he grasped what was actually being advanced by some of the Democrats. He said this.
You need the wall. I mean, it's wonderful. I'd love not to build the wall, but you need the wall. And I will tell you this, the ICE officers and the Border Patrol agents, I had them just recently up. They say if you don't have the wall, in certain areas, obviously, that aren't protected by nature, if you don't have the wall, you cannot have security. You just can't have it. It doesn't work. Without the wall, security doesn't work. We're all wasting time.
Well, that was good.
That was a pretty good moment. But again, I think people are nervous. They're nervous, and maybe justifiably so because of some of the exchange and that thing about, well, I'm going to sign whatever you send me, I'm relying on you people. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. I don't know why the president isn't submitting his own bill to Congress and saying, this is what I want. That would be the better way to go. You don't let Congress wag your tail. That I'm concerned about.
I have to say that it's like this is a movie we've seen over and over again. I've written entire books devoted in significant part about this bipartisan cabal that has been pushing a broad-based amnesty for years. I fought this in 2007. This is like Freddy Krueger coming back again. We just didn't think it was going to come back under this president. But look, you also didn't have Bush saying anything like this about the wall, right, Raymond? Bush didn't want to sign the fence bill. I remember President Bush arguing with certain people about the fence. I'm not going to sign that bill about the fence.
Right.
Just a fence he didn't want to sign. 855-40-LAURA.
Every line lit up.
Yeah, we have every line lit up. We're going to get to your calls. Also, a man whose company is actually bidding to build the wall. He'll give us some of the nitty-gritty on what the administration has been saying about this and whether he thinks they're really serious or not. Obviously, he stands to make a lot of money, but nevertheless, it's an interesting perspective. Let's go to Linda on the line 1 in Florida. Linda. Linda,
Hello?
You there, girlfriend? Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
I'm here. Do you hear me? Okay,
Go ahead.
I just think to use Trump's own terms, he is going to be having a disaster for future voters because if he breaks his promise and he grants amnesty to these dreamers, it's over. I think it's over. And I think you are a voice of reason, and you've said it so well that if he caves in on this and he goes along with Democrats, it's over.
Well, I don't think. See, my view on this is that you're not. Amnesty the next day, they're not going to say you're a racist or a xenophobe for a whole bunch of other reasons. In fact, I think they think you're then weak, and then they go in for the real political kill. That's what I think. They think you're chum in the water at that point. Plus, they've successfully driven a wedge between you and your core voters, and they want to kill the spirit of the populist movement. Their goal here is not just to get amnesty and the electoral advantage that would bring about, the demographic change that would bring about as far as voting, but they want to drive a stake through the heart of conservative populism. You're listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction. Let's go to Johnny on line 4. Johnny is more hopeful than some of us cynics out there. Johnny, I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm really not. I'm going to reserve judgment, but I've seen this movie before and I know how it ends. Go ahead, Johnny.
I don't think Trump's going to cave. I don't think he's going to cave at all.
Johnny.
I think
Go
he's
ahead.
putting pressure. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Hello? Okay. I don't think he's going to cave at all. I really don't. I think he put the ball in the Democrats' court to say they're going to have to come to the table and negotiate. But I also think, I was born and raised in America. My kids were born and raised in America. We have dreams too. If we don't obey the law, nobody comes and gives us free stuff. If I don't pay taxes on my house and I die, my kids don't inherit my house. The government does. They don't give my kids my house and say, well, your parents made a mistake. The word is illegal. Illegal. That's the whole thing.
I appreciate it, Johnny. We're going to take a break. 855-40-LAURA. Coming up, the man who wants to build the wall. Okay, that's the Trump we know and love. We didn't quite vote for the Trump who's like, oh, this is a bill of love. What? Thank you very much, Jeb. That's why Jeb Bush is like, he's stealing my lines. We're going to get to all your calls. 855-40-LAURA. Are you in fear of a Trump sellout on the wall or on amnesty? And is this the only way he gets his wall funded? Although Jeff Flake seems to say it's going to be a see-through wall, meaning no wall for most of the border. What a joke.
Opaque.
Oh, opaque. Jeff Flake doesn't even make sense. He's worse than Michael Wolff at interviews. He doesn't even know what he's saying. Joining us now is Tommy Fisher, President and CEO of Fisher Sand and Gravel, one of the companies selected to build the border wall prototype. He joins us now. Tommy, good to talk to you. You heard the discussions yesterday. Obviously, you have a vested interest in getting this thing built. You make a huge amount of money, which you should, if it gets done right. How long would it take for you guys to build? Let's say they only did get 800 miles of wall. How long would it take you to build that? Would you only use American labor?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Laura, for being on the show. Yes, we're all American-made, but most of all, let's compare apples to apples here. Our proposal is a solid.
Hey, Tommy, you got to speak up, my friend.
We
got to do me a favor. I don't know what's going on, James, but we got to hear people because my listeners want to hear what he has to say. So, Tommy, you have to speak up, and we have to make sure we hear every word of what you say. So, you heard my question. I'll give it another go. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me any better now, Laura?
Yes, much better. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So the main thing is our proposal is we're building a solid concrete wall, not a steel fence. There's a huge difference in a 32-foot high, 2.5-foot thick concrete wall. We have a proposal right now sitting on Department of Homeland Security's desk, backed by a bond, probably the largest bond in the history of the United States, to build 700 continuous miles of wall that completely covers, with high-speed roads on each side, so you have a border protection system that completely secures California, Arizona, and New Mexico in less than 6 years, and we can add a couple hundred miles to Texas. So you're talking about, two different things. So I believe President Trump was exactly right that you need a wall to have full border protection. And the difference is, Laura, our wall will last 150 years. Right now, they're looking at having to fix fence or steel, and I'm a big steel guy, trust me, that's 15 years old, where our wall, at the same amount of time, if we built the protection system, would be in puberty after 15 or 20 years. We have something for 150. Now, it's going to take a little longer than, I love President Trump. He's bold in a year, but I know how to build construction. But the biggest thing is when you build construction.
I mean, it's not going to. Okay, so Tommy, let me just translate for my listeners. So it's not any year-long project, you're saying now. But we just heard in a tweet from Secretary Nielsen of DHS. She said it's the plan right now. And this was Kelly's chief of staff over at the White House. The plan now is a 700-mile long wall that will take 10 years. You know what I hear to that? It's never going to get built. When I hear 10 years, I say Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer gets back in power. That stuff's not going to ever happen. I'm very concerned about 10 years. 10 years? We put the World Trade Center towers up. How long did it take us and the new towers up? 10 years? I think we get every American who believes in border enforcement down at that wall, put their own piece of concrete in there. I don't care what we have to do. That thing should not take 10 years. Yeah. Put a man on the moon. It's going to take 10 years. Put a concrete wall up. Go ahead, finish.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is if you want something built to last, not only are we building the wall, we're building the roads. So that's the biggest piece, Laura, to give the 3 levels of defense for these agents.
Yeah.
And with our system, these agents are going to be able to do and cover 5 times the amount of ground because they're driving on roads that completely connect. So one more big point I want to make with you and all your listeners. Our proposal goes through the mountains. You have complete access from one end to another. So if you have a breach or you have an opening, people are going to go to the weakest spot. We will fix that. And the other thing that our proposal does, if you do it right and we build the biggest infrastructure project in the history of America, and it's done right, you're not sitting 15 years from now talking to me, why are we replacing your steel fence?
Interesting little tidbits. I love that. Tommy Fisher, thank you so much. I love that perspective and the details that are necessary, actual facts. Not conjecture, not we hope it's going to get built. All right, Tommy, I appreciate it. Coming up, Corey Lewandowski. This is a concern of my listeners. We'll get to all your calls. Is there a coming cave-in on the wall?
You're not so far away from comprehensive immigration reform. And if you want to take it that further step, I'll take the heat. I don't care. I'll take all the heat you want to give me. And I'll take the heat off both the Democrats and the Republicans.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. I'm a little confused, but maybe you all can help me understand this. The president himself was called far-right during the campaign. He was an immigration hardliner because he wanted to build a wall. He wasn't catering to the amnesty crowd. He called Jeb, Amnesty Marco, and now he's using the language. Confused about that. Very confused. That's the same language that Lindsey Graham is using. Someone's getting into his head on that golf course. I don't like that. Let me just say right now, I don't like that. And guess what? I don't care if I never get invited to the White House again. You know, took on the Bush administration on this issue. That relationship went south. And if I have to do that with this administration, I'll do the same thing. I'm an honest broker here. I'm also going to wait until I see how this plays out, because I know what I think is ideal may not be possible in the art of politics. Because as I said last week, we don't have the votes right now to just straight down get rid of chain migration, build the wall, and deport people who are in the country who shouldn't be here. We don't have the votes to do that. If we did, we already would have done it. So President Trump is trying to navigate these choppy waters. I get that. I really do. It's practical governance. At the same time, he has a unique and powerful platform to get accomplished what he wants to get accomplished. And I don't think it serves him at all to be seen in any way, shape, or form to be given an elbow to the people who lined up in the cold to see him 2 days before the election, or their talk radio hosts they listen to, or their Fox hosts they listen to. I don't think that's going to serve him well. For a moment, you might get the warm love and hugs from the establishment, but they'll sell you down the river faster than I can say impeachment. Okay? They'll sell you down the river fast. But I'll tell you, the people who didn't sell you down the river, the people who actually voted for you. Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. I'm delighted he's with us. Of course, the author of Let Trump Be Trump, huge bestseller, who worked for this president, ran his campaign when few thought he could win, and when the chant at the rallies wasn't, we'll build 700 miles of wall and then the rest will be see-through fence. It was, we're going to build the wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. Corey, how are you? Good to talk to you.
I'm great to be on with you. Thank you. How are you today?
Tell me what you can take issue with what I just said, or you can pick it apart. But I can tell you, I have a board full of callers right now who are ready for bear here. They're loaded for bear, and
Laura,
they didn't like what they saw or heard yesterday, in part at that meeting. And I've got to say, now that I've had a chance to watch the whole thing, I'm not wild about it either. But go ahead.
Intellectual honesty is something that you have always been accused of having, and it's very important. I think I'm the same way, and I tell people the truth whether they like it or not. I thought Donald Trump was masterful yesterday when it came to bringing the cameras in and putting these Democrats on television to say, hey, we want to solve a problem, okay? But the way we solve the problem is from a position of strength, and that position of strength is fulfilling the campaign promise to build a wall on the southern border. And there is a way that that can be done. It is something he pledged to do, and it's something that he must do in order to fulfill the promises he made on the campaign. That's what the American people elected him for.
When he said this should be a bill of love, Corey, and I know you're pals with the president, and I like the president, and he's a friend of mine too, but sometimes friends have to do a little friendly intervention when you go off the rails. And when he starts talking about, it's a bill of love, what? That's exactly what he laughed at Jeb for saying. Why are we saying the same thing at Jeb?
Well, you have to remember, right? Here's where we are now. It's amazing. The Democrats are poised to take back the House in 2018 in the midterm elections. We've got 31 incumbent Republican members of Congress who've already said they're not taking.
Wait, we're losing you there, Corey. You still there? Is Corey there? Okay, we're going to reconnect with Corey. Let's go to the lines. Barrett in Washington, line 2. Barrett.
Hey, Laura, I don't wake up at 6 a.m. if I'm not sounding the alarms here in Seattle for you guys because I just got off at 2. Yes, I'm very worried about what's going on. Lindsey Graham, hearing those words, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to hear Laura tomorrow. So that's where I'm saying. And then you just mentioned something about Christine Nielsen's tweet today. That also freaks me out.
I appreciate it, my friend. It is. I know my listeners. I don't like it when people call them the far right. I don't like it when Lindsey Graham does it, McCain does it, or Chuck Schumer does it. And I don't much like it when the president does it either. Is this audience who voted for you, Mr. President? Is this far right? You know what they are? They're right about this issue, as you were when you campaigned. I would be very careful about using the language of the people who despise you. Corey Lewandowski is back. Corey, I can tell you what my listeners are saying to me right now because I'm getting their tweets and their emails. Corey's never going to criticize this president no matter what he does. Is that fair?
No, that's not fair, and let me tell you why. I have been hypercritical of this administration that they were not ready to go on day one, and we lost a year as the Republican Party of getting things done in Congress. When you look back until we finally got a tax bill done, there were almost no significant legislative accomplishments that came out of this Congress. We did not promise to repeal and replace. That didn't get done. We haven't done the transportation infrastructure bill. That hasn't got done. Now we get the tax bill done, and that is a huge accomplishment. But, Laura, this president campaigned on, and I ran a campaign on making promises to the American people that have to be fulfilled. And if those promises aren't fulfilled, I think what you will see at the ballot box in November is the Democrats will take back this House, and if they do that, do not kid yourself, they will immediately move to articles of impeachment against the President of the United States. They're not openly talking about it, but that is what their agenda is. And their agenda right now is moving forward because we've got so many Republicans retiring already in competitive House districts. We've got a one-seat majority in the Senate. And what I don't think some people in the White House understand, and I've been critical of them, is how important following through on the campaign promises are, and immigration and building the wall was a hallmark of the campaign that I ran.
We're talking to Corey Lewandowski on the Laura Ingraham Show, the author of Let Trump Be Trump. A good friend of mine just messaged me. Since I don't know if he wants me to say who he is, I won't mention his name. He said to me, how many times did I tell you that Trump is more like Nixon than he is like Reagan? Can you imagine President Reagan saying at a meeting, the positions that were expressed in this room are my positions? That's what apparently President Trump said yesterday after we heard all these, we had all these big, amnesty people speaking. He said this, that's what my position is. And so my friend said he craves the acceptance of the intelligentsia just like the trickster. Reagan never cared what they thought. It consumed Nixon and it consumes Trump. Why else would he suck up to the New York Times all the time and give them interviews? What's your reaction to that? Does Trump crave the acceptance of the intelligentsia?
No, I don't think he does, but what I do think he does is he wants to see Washington get things done. And I have to tell you, and I've been very critical, I think some of the team around this president don't care about the agenda that he ran on. There are globalists in that building. There are people who don't care what the president says. They do what they want to do, what they think is right for the country, and not what he wants to do. And there is a subset of the staff in that building who is not loyal to the president. They are loyal to their own agenda. If you go look at the people like Stephen Miller, who is a hardliner on this issue, right? We saw him this weekend on the television.
He's lost the battle. He's lost the battle here, though, right? He argued for no amnesty. He lost that battle inside the White House. He lost it. He tried it. He lost it. So did Bannon. Bannon's gone. So they think they killed Bannon off. Here, Corey, they think they killed Bannon off. You didn't come into the administration. Here are the people who are Corey, Dave Bossie, Bannon, Miller's still there, Julia Hahn's still there. But there are basically two people inside that White House, as far as I can tell, who are really the conservative populists. And then you got Fleischheiser, who's great, Stephen Vaughn, who's great. Wilbur Ross is really good on most of these issues. But the real solid conservative populists, other than Miller and Julia Hahn, I don't know who they are in there. And it doesn't mean the other people don't have great things to accomplish. They do.
Well, Peter Navarro is a great guy, and he's been steadfast on our issues.
3.
He's been sidelined.
I stand corrected. 3.
Laurie, your point is a very fair one. And what we have to understand is that you remove the Bannons of the world and the Dave Bossies and the Corey Lewandowskis and those type of people who understand, at least at some degree, what the movement was that we identified early that the Trump team knew and that Donald Trump had his finger on, and you run in the opposite direction of that because you think that that's what the Democrats are going to do and support you, you're sorely mistaken. The Democrats will do nothing to support this president. They will make him fight on an issue that they don't care about. Then they will say no after he has basically given up all of the good talking points, and that's
and they'll cut you off at the knees. And the one thing I really don't want to hear from this president is the talking points of the establishment criticizing my listeners, my show, and all the efforts that I put in, as you have, Corey, for the last 20 years on these issues, long before he decided to run for president, by the way. Let's play Donald Trump from yesterday. It's Trump 6, James, on comprehensive. I've never heard him talk about comprehensive reform on the campaign trail except to criticize it. This was him yesterday.
I also think that after we do DACA, and I really believe we should be able to be successful, I really think we should look in terms of your permanent solution and to the whole situation with immigration. I think a lot of people in this room would agree to that also, but we'll do it in steps. And most people agree with that, I think, Dick. We'll do the steps. Even you say, let's do this, and then we go phase 2.
Yeah, Dick Durbin in here. 2 peas in a pod. That's what Durbin wants. Go ahead.
Laura, these Democrats have been the giant obstacle to everything this president has tried to achieve, and what they are now doing is trying to put him in a position where he has moved so far to the left on this issue that it will never be far enough. They will never support him, and they will use this issue to run against him in the midterm elections, and they will do it very successfully. So there is no value of trying to negotiate with the Democrats on this issue because they will never support you. They will never support the Republican agenda. They will never support the Trump agenda in Congress.
One other thing, Corey, before we let you go, I also think that what they are doing, and I can tell you from my tweets and Facebook page right now, people are extremely concerned that they are going to be demoralizing those Trump supporters who have stuck by you through thick and thin, through Billy Bush and John McCain and Khizr Khan and Judge Curiel and all. They stuck with him only to hear him yesterday talk about the far right and to spoon with the people who despise all of those core Trump supporters and call them racist, xenophobe, and everything else because they believe in border enforcement. So you drive a wedge between Trump and those voters, and you're done.
Laura, this goes back to the people that are surrounding the president in that building, okay? Look at the people who are in that building, and if you think more than 5 of them were either still on the campaign or supporting this president prior to him becoming the president, you're sorely mistaken. They weren't there. Their agenda is a different agenda. Their agenda is having illegal products dumped in our soil, closing coal plants. Everything that Trump campaigned against is what their agenda is because they're globalists. That's a problem, and the only person that can fix that problem is the President of the United States.
He better do right by these people. Corey Lewandowski, by the way, you might want to check out at my show last night where Scaramucci, I caught him because on Tapper he said Trump's a globalist. He's a globalist.
I saw that.
What the hell? He's a globalist.
Look,
he campaigned against globalism. What a joke. So now he's a globalist. He's going over to Davos. Okay, this is what I voted for. 855-40-LAURA. Corey, love having you on. Come on TV. We'll talk to you soon. We'll take a break, close out this hour. Man, I'm having deja vu. This is like 2007, 2014 all over again. Don't go away. All right, we have a board full of calls. We're going to get to every single one of you. Be patient and cycle them back through. Tweet me, Facebook me. We believe in this president's agenda. We want to see it be successful. You can't get everything you want in politics, but on those core issues, you cannot be seen to insult your core base, those who lined up to vote for you and support you. That would be the death knell for this presidency, and I don't want to see that happen. 855-40-LAURA.